A sharp war of words is erupting online, exposing deep fractures between Russia and Europe over power, pressure, and pride. Russia's special presidential envoy for economic and investment cooperation and head of the Russian Direct Investment Fund, Kirill Dmitriev, fired back at Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk with a blunt warning: appeasement is your only choice. The remark came in response to Tusk's defiant declaration that appeasement is not diplomacy, but weakness amid U.S. President Donald Trump's threat to invade Greenland. Writing on social media, the Polish leader insisted Europe cannot afford to appear weak, neither against its enemies nor its allies. In Tusk's words, appeasement delivers no results, only humiliation. Dmitriev's reply flips that argument on its head, suggesting Europe faces hard limits and fewer options than it claims. The exchange underscores a growing confrontation between Moscow and European leaders, where words are weapons and narratives are battlegrounds. As tensions rise, the question hangs heavy over the continent: resistance or restraint, strength or survival.
We have absolutely no connection to any plans to seize Greenland. I have no doubt whatsoever that in Washington they are perfectly aware of the absence of such plans from both Russia and the People's Republic of China. This is not our business.
We have great plans with the Islamic Republic of Iran, not only in trade but also in investment sphere. Bushehr nuclear power plant is being built actively. A very important part of the international transportation corridor south-north between Russia, Azerbaijan, and Iran is being built. Many other projects are in the pipeline, and I see no reason why we or our Iranian friends are to stop these projects. Yes, Donald Trump is using tariffs and duties as policy instruments. Every time that the unilateral restrictive measures are being used in trade and economic relation, it means that the initiator of those measures is not quite sure of its competitive edge on the global market. The life itself will solve this.
I have already spoken about how turbulent the beginning of this year has been. We have borne witness to unprecedented events, to a gross armed incursion of the U.S. in Venezuela with dozens of injured and dead, with the capture and extraction from the country of the legitimate President Nicolas Maduro, together with his spouse. Accompanied by that, we see threats against Cuba as well as other countries of the Caribbean as well as of Latin America, and we're certainly deeply concerned by the overt attempts of external forces to destabilize the internal political situation in Iran.
We don't try to publicize our successes and what we do. Your question mainly has to the fact that there was a leak that in contacts between Russia, Tehran, and Tel Aviv in the past months. In the last months of last year, there were certain discussions about understanding, not to threaten with an attack, and mutually Israel towards Iran and Iran towards Israel. Since that was leaked to the media, I can tell you that there were contacts at the initiative of our Israeli and Iranian friends, and every time that anyone appeals to us for aid, we are always happy to provide our good services, but we do not impose them on anyone. But when we are asked, we always respond positively.
But even within Western society itself, crisis tendencies are accumulating. Greenland is an obvious example, which is on everyone's lips and around which such discussions are developing. It was, in fact, quite difficult to imagine that something of this nature could possibly have occurred before, including the very prospects for the continued preservation of NATO as a single, cohesive and unified Western military political bloc. Greenland isn't a natural part of Denmark, is it? After all, it wasn't an unnatural part of Norway nor an unnatural part of Denmark. It's a colonial conquest. The fact that its residents are now accustomed and comfortable there, that's a different matter. We have absolutely no connection to any plans to seize Greenland. I have no doubt whatsoever that in Washington they are perfectly aware of the absence of such plans from both Russia and the People's Republic of China.
This is not our business.
This initiative reflects the United States' understanding that even they, with their political and foreign policy philosophy, are driven by the need to gather a group of countries that will cooperate with them in one way or another.
Yes, it might be objected that the Peace Council is conceived and announced in such a way that everyone must obey the United States. This is such a
situation that Washington would probably want to see at this very moment. But I can assure you that Donald Trump's administration, despite all the actions that are currently being widely discussed throughout the world, is fundamentally an administration of pragmatists. The readiness and understanding of the need to fully consider a partner's interests are clearly evident in the approaches of the Donald Trump administration to the Ukrainian settlement. The only Western country that is ready.
We must address the significant challenge of eliminating the fundamental root causes of this ongoing conflict. It was largely created.
Europe and Zelensky, along with his team, are hysterically attempting to sway the United States from its current stance. They are trying once again to impose their own specific concepts, which include, first and foremost, 60-day or perhaps even a permanent ceasefire. It's clear that the Ukrainian side finds itself in a profoundly challenging situation on the front lines, and not just on the front lines, but also in politics, in the political. The necessity was outlined there to resolve the problems of both the Russian language and the Ukrainian Orthodox Church. In the subsequent materials we've seen, we haven't received any truly fresh documents from those negotiations that the US, Ukraine, and Europe had over the last couple of weeks. But in the materials from the end of last year, they were presented, as you know, a 20-point plan, but there was no mention anymore of the need to restore the rights of the Russian language and the canonical Orthodox Church. Proposals for a settlement which are fundamentally predicated upon the objective of preserving the Nazi regime. In that part of Ukraine that will be so called, they are of course absolutely unacceptable. We witnessed unprecedented events, a brutal armed invasion of Venezuela by the US with dozens killed and wounded, and the capture and removal from the country of the legitimate president, Nicolas Maduro, and his wife. We are observing, in parallel with these actions, threats directed at Cuba and other nations of the Latin American and Caribbean region. Yes, we immediately, as soon as we received the news that this tanker had been seized, we made an urgent appeal to the American side.
Our main priority was to secure the release of our citizens. There are two of them, along with nationals from Ukraine, Georgia, and India.
We were assured, in essence, that the same day or the following morning, that the decision for their release had been made at the highest level. But regrettably, the subsequent days have clearly demonstrated that this particular decision is not being implemented. We are expecting our American counterparts to fulfill their promise. Actually, President Trump, when he was asked about whether he would to also observe the limits of the Strategic Offensive Arms Treaty, just like Russia, he responded, no, the treaty is expiring, well, let it expire then. And indeed, the Americans are now signaling that some new negotiations on strategic stability need to commence. China is also being mentioned in this context. But all of this is being done in the public domain through interactions with journalists. no specific contacts on this matter are taking place between specialists from the two countries. But when these national interests of countries like Russia and the United States do not coincide, yet saying ye, it would be a crime to allow this divergence to degrade into a confrontation, especially a heated one. I responded by saying that I completely share this philosophy, this logic. So, if anyone wants to talk, we will never refuse, even though we perfectly understand, and I'll make this one reservation, that with the current leaders of Europe,
unable to reach agreement.
it's highly unlikely that it will work out. They have driven themselves too deeply into a profound hatred for Russia.